Okay, Josh, we talked in the first part about young people, which is obviously incredibly important for the longevity of the sport. How do you think that racing is seen by young people looking from the outside in that aren't really interested in it at the moment?
I think it's seen as a complicated sport. I think it might be seen as a sport for the middle and upper class, and I think it's seen as a sport. I don't think many people are educated. I think a lot of people read articles that maybe put the sport in a negative light, regarding obviously topical subjects, and I think they just automatically presume. I don't think it's marketed very well to young people themselves. I think there's not a lot of education.
Okay, now, I was going to say it's not marketed to young people. I mean, what should racing be doing to get people to interact with it? I mean, should they be going out on the street with a travelling sort of information booth or something? What would you do to try and bring people from the outside in and say, come on in, the water's lovely?
I spoke to my mum about this because she's sort of involved in marketing at the Jockey Club, and I've always said, why isn't Altior, why isn't Enable marketed the same way Anthony Joshua is when he fights? Like, sort of the whole country stops when Anthony Joshua has a fight, and that's not the same with Enable. You see adverts for months in advance of an Anthony Joshua fight. Why isn't that the same with Altior? I understand the reasons and the complications with like being a non-runner, etc. But I still don't understand why you couldn't market that maybe the week of the race and really build it up on everything and have those main stars as household names. I don't think Altior's a household name. I'd say the only horse that is a household name at the moment is Tiger Roll, and that's because most families in the country stop for the Grand National. That's sort of the only race really the whole country gets together. But I think racing could do a job by doing those specific stars and making use of them and marketing them like the Grand National.
Spending some proper money with adverts between Coronation Street or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So now then, recently there was quite a furore because you came up with something absolutely outrageous on Twitter. You suggested that there might be a better horse than Frankel.
Yeah.
Now, I can only imagine what the response might have been if you'd said something really outrageous.
Yeah.
Were you taken aback by the amount of vitriol aimed at you for having the audacity to put that opinion up?
I was surprised. I didn't not expect it though. I think it was one of those things. Whenever you criticise a horse like Frankel, people say he's the greatest of all time.
You didn't even criticise it. You just said that Puntable might be.
Criticise probably the wrong word, but you get the sort of the Khalid Abdullah fanboys that are die-hard fans, and they will bat and rubbish off any opinion that suggests otherwise. I sort of expected it, and it didn't really faze me at all. It didn't faze me massively.
Now, you're a confident person.
Yeah.
Now, if that had been somebody less confident, and we're talking about fanboys, we're talking about, I'm assuming, middle-aged men. The majority of these people, a lot of them are hiding behind false names anyway. If you'd just been a young person that had gone racing for a couple of times, watched that race and enthusiastically typed up what you thought on Twitter, and you got that sort of tirade, would that not put somebody of a weaker disposition off?
I agree, and it definitely, I sort of put myself in the shoes of maybe a young racing fan that started doing Twitter or started doing social media in the same way that I have, that maybe not have the audience that I have. Sort of maybe they've done it for a month and they've got, 100, 200 followers, and it gets all this attraction, but it's negative. And I thought, ultimately, I think if I was in that position, I'd probably stop doing it altogether, and I wouldn't even sort of make sure. I definitely would stop. It's one of those things that you think, all these people are saying this thing about me rather than the actual statement. It would definitely knock your confidence.
Now, from what I've seen, obviously I'm not a youngster, but it seems like a fairly common reaction, especially in racing. A lot of people think they know better than somebody else, and if you dare to have an opinion, they're down on you like a ton of bricks. I mean, that's got to be... Do you think that people in racing, and in racing social media in general, actually resent young people?
No. No, I don't think they resent them. I think at the moment they're realising they need young people in racing. I don't think they resent them, but I think they resent when they think. I think they think their opinion is more valid than a young person's. And I understand. I sort of think, why would you get tipping advice off a 19-year-old that's only been able to punt for 2 years? And I understand why people are sort of slightly quite cautious about doing so. I don't think they hate young people, but I think you've got to do it in a right way to make sure you've got to convince them almost, rather than it's just accepted straight away.
But the good thing to see was that after the backlash, you got the backlash to the backlash, didn't you?
Yeah.
So in the end, you got a lot of support from a lot of people. Yeah,
I gained far more than I lost, definitely. When you've got industry professionals like Paul Keeley, who works here, who I look up to a lot, Fergal O'Brien, the trainer, and other various people, and just general racing sort of fans acknowledged that might not be the right thing to do, and that they weren't really targeting the statement, they were targeting my age, and sort of age should not matter anyway. It definitely sort of filled me with a bit more confidence, and it definitely reassured me that stuff like that wouldn't happen in the future. And I've said this before, but I would definitely take the brunt of that if it means that people learn, and it means that a racing fan in the future can have their opinion.
And the final bit probably put a smile on your face was when the official ratings came out and they agreed with you.
Yeah, I remember being at work, and I remember a few people came up to the desk and being like, yeah, you were right. Yeah, it was bittersweet.
Well, that's all part of the fun of racing. We'll wait and see next season if you're right or not.
Yeah.
But it's going to be so exciting to watch these, which is what it's all about, of course.
Yeah.
Now, your following's grown rapidly. What do you think attracted people to your content?
I think people like my content. I'd like to think people like my content because it's slightly more raw than the sort of big companies where I can sort of sit down with a jockey or a trainer my age and sort of talk to them about racing, and it's not polished, it's not selling anything. I don't really sell anything other than myself in a way. I think I try and obviously gain a bigger audience, like as big as audience as I can. So it's not selling a product, which I think it's just easy to watch, I think.
But if you were just trying to sell yourself, there'd be a lot of better mediums than horse racing, wouldn't there?
Yeah, definitely. It's not the largest audience in the world. It's very, very niche, and it's definitely difficult. I don't think I've always said that there's probably almost maybe 300,000-400,000 people on Twitter that you can market yourself to in racing specifically. That's why some of the big accounts don't really have more than that following wise, and it's definitely niche. And yeah.
So a lot of you've got some really exciting. We don't date this too much. We want people to watch it in a year or so's time. But you've got some really exciting content coming up. Tell us a little bit about what you've been doing.
Yeah, so I've got a few bits of content coming out. One is just after sort of the uproar. It seems silly that you even have to say that. After the uproar, me and a friend sort of sat down and we said, they don't really understand. These people don't really understand what I'm trying to do. And they don't understand what my goal is with the stuff that I'm doing. Why don't we sort of not teach them, but let them learn a bit more about me. So I'm making a documentary about being a young person in racing, sort of becoming my way into the industry, different people on the way that got me to where I am, because I do think I'm quite lucky to work in an establishment as recognised as the Racing Post. And that's an exciting piece. I've got a big day out at Cheltenham at the end of the month. I'm Cheltenham Racecourse's guest tipster for the open meeting, which is, it's going to be really good fun.
Okay, we're at the Racing Post, so what are you doing here?
I am it's an exciting team just been put together for social media. I think the Racing Post and the racing industry as a whole sort of just realised that you might need to move with the times and market racing in a different way. And I think the team that has been put together here that I'm part of is that's the job. So big focus on social media, big focus on reaching out to as many people as possible and gaining a new audience, and ultimately selling Racing Pros products, but yeah, trying to do it on a bigger scale.
So how big a team is in the social media team?
It's a new team. I think 6 or 7 people have been appointed purely just for that team, so it's exciting. But then obviously I get to do cool stuff like the podcast and stuff like that.
Okay, now finally, this is Betting People series. We've done over 100. We've got people like John McCurtain who sadly passed away.
Yeah.
So the idea for this is to be like a Wikipedia in inverted commas of racing.
Yeah.
So hopefully people will be watching this in a decade, 2 decades time.
Yeah.
Where's Josh going to be?
Where's Josh going to be? Unknown. I'd like to. I'm not sure where I'll finish, but there's a few things I want to tick off on the way. I'd like to do some TV work at some point. That's definitely something that I sort of want to go in the direction of. In 20 years' time, I couldn't know. I don't know how sort of endless the opportunity could be through social media. I'd just like to be recognised in the racing industry, and maybe in a larger industry or something like that. But obviously, maybe own a horse or 2. That'd be nice.
We've certainly made a great start. Anyway, Joshua, Stacey, thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you very much.